Heather, for listeners that might be newer to this topic or are still trying to kind of understand terms that, quite frankly, you don't hear in everyday life, but in the recovery community do get thrown around, talk us through what is the co-addiction model and what would we call a partner-sensitive model, and what are the differences? Give us kind of an overview of these two approaches to recovery.
So historically, when you had somebody who was struggling with sex addiction or compulsive sexual behaviors, it was determined that that person's spouse was in some regard also struggling with addictive behaviors, because why else would she be with somebody who was addicted? And so there was a lot of the language and even the model that said that you struggle too. And that's why you're with this person. And so our approach to healing for both of you is going to be identical. So the one who struggles is going to look at past pain, past trauma, family of origin issues, a lot of those things. And as the partner, because you also have addictive behaviors, then that model is going to look the same. So you're going to look at your past trauma, that your past pain, that your family of origin, because really that has a lot to do with the relationship and with your healing. So that was historically the old model. And so in recent years, it has come up that, you know what, this really isn't the best model, because to some extent, you're then blaming the partner for the addict's behaviors. And that's not right. And so that's when a lot of Dr. Barbara Steffen's work, that her work on a partner-sensitive approach, as well as a trauma-informed approach, those are kind of fused together, which then says that to the partner that, you know what, you're healing from the trauma that's being created because you're in a relationship with somebody who struggles, that trauma, we need to look at that first, that really is the reason why you're struggling the way that you're struggling, the reason why you're having these symptoms that really are symptoms related to trauma, not because you're an addict, but because because you're living with an addict. Those are kind of the key differences.
Yeah, and early in my recovery journey with John, I realized and was told and know about myself that I can be very controlling, but in the context of, and that control issue comes from my childhood, my family of origin. But really when it comes down to it, it's really about seeking safety. So yes, I have behaviors that can slide easily into controlling behaviors, but even as a child, I was seeking safety if somebody forgot to pick me up from school. So then as an adult, I may be, asking or controlling a situation because of that fear that I might be left alone. And so that is a legitimate thing that I wrestle with and I've worked on and I'm aware of. But in the context of a betrayal in my relationship, it's completely different. We shouldn't be starting off talking about, my control issues. Those can be later for a marriage session after we're through the betrayal. But that fracture in our relationship attachment and our relationship, like that injury that brought us to finding help, that is not about my childhood control issues. Anything I'm doing in my marriage is really seeking safety, because my marriage and my most vulnerable partner that I have on earth, my most intimate partner I have on earth, has betrayed me and cut me deeply. And so I'm looking for safety. And if we want to look at John's history, he had already been stuck in his sexual addiction for 20 years before even knowing me. So that my control issues didn't cause his addiction. And I think that separation of trying to tie all of the spouse's childhood issues to the relationship is not appropriate when they're there healing from a betrayal. That is for later, or if a couple is just trying to figure out how to integrate their two lives and how they relate to each other.
Yeah, I think there really was a value to the co-addict model in that it really helped people see that the marriage was impacted, that both people were being impacted, and as a couple needed to figure out recovery. So that model did, I think, create some awareness that maybe wasn't there before. But on the real downside or a drawback to it is it really processed the whole experience through the lens of the addiction and the struggler and what they were going through, and treated the spouse kind of as a subsidiary to the whole story. And it was like, well, yeah, you're along for the ride, and so we need to address your issues too. But it didn't allow them to have their own story. And that's what I think is so powerful about the partner-sensitive approach and being trauma-informed, is it recognizes you have two people that are having two very different experiences and really need two very different things in the process. And in the end, would all of us benefit from understanding our family of origin? Would all of us benefit from knowing what's wounded us and how it drives our thoughts, emotions, behaviors? Yes, absolutely. But in the recovery journey, the timing and the spacing and what is needed in the moments of crisis and discovery and early attempts to repair trust and intimacy are really very, very different. And so I think the partner-sensitive approach takes that into account, and is why it's called, it's partner-sensitive, that they have their own needs, their own challenges, and they're very different from what the addict is going through. But in the end, the goal, I think, is still coupleship, that we're trying to reestablish something that, when possible, can help this relationship grow and find successful footing again.